Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here today. I'm Shannon Watts, founder of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, which is part of Everytown for Gun Safety, and I'm very, very honored to be here today. Thank you, Senators Blumenthal, Murphy, and Schumer for your leadership on gun violence prevention, and thank you to all of the survivors we have here in the room today. They know all too well the damage of senseless and preventable gun violence in this country, and I'm inspired by their passion to do all they can to prevent other families from feeling the same pain. These past few weeks, the headlines in the news have been absolutely tragic in our country. This summer, the nation has been shaken by tragedies in Charleston, Chattanooga, and last week, Lafayette. And the scary reality is that there are rampant gun violence problems that never make the headlines. These incidents don't always make the headlines. In fact, 88 Americans are shot and killed in this country every single day due to gun violence, and hundreds more are injured. Many of our political leaders have asked for thoughts and prayers. That's not enough. It is long past time for them to take action and keep guns away from criminals and other dangerous people. Today, we are here demanding action from Congress, and we are demanding that retailers close the Charleston loophole and follow Walmart's lead to not sell guns without a completed background check. As moms, as Americans, we are outraged by these shooting tragedies in our country, and we are ready to turn that outrage into action. And that's why we're here today. I'm honored now to hand the microphone over to Senator Richard Blumenthal, a strong leader for colleagues in Congress on gun violence prevention efforts.
Thank you so much. I want to really begin by thanking the organizations that have committed themselves to countering the obstructionist weight of the NRA and other groups that have imposed such a stranglehold on our democratic process, impeding common sense, sensible measures to prevent gun violence. Moms Demand Action, Everytown. These groups are grassroots, and they will help us win, and we will win. For all of the doubters, let's remember, the President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, was almost assassinated. Jim Brady was almost killed. In fact, he was paralyzed, and still, after a near assassination of the President of the United States, it took 10 years to pass the Brady Bill. So we should take heart that this struggle, this battle, is a marathon, not a sprint. And your work is so profoundly significant in reaching real people and making clear to them that we can take action, common sense, sensible measures, supported by the majority of my colleagues. We had 54 votes in the session before this one, supported by more than 90% of the American people, even the majority of gun owners. These measures can make a difference. And the fundamental central principle is no background check, no gun. That is the single most effective way to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people who may be convicted felons or drug addicts or domestic abusers under court orders, or, yes, dangerous because they have been committed for mental health care. And I am hopeful. In fact, we will be continuing the pressure on gun dealers to refrain from selling any gun to someone whose background check is not completed. Yes, they have the authority to do it under the law. If 3 days expire without that background check coming back, they're permitted to sell the gun, even if they're a licensed gun dealer. But why not do as Walmart has done and refuse to sell that gun to anyone whose background check is incomplete? No background check, no gun. And the background check law should be extended, made universal, so that the gun shows, the online sales, the private purchases, all are covered. No background check, no gun. There have been loopholes in these laws that have permitted Darrell Roof and Rusty Hauser, and for the tragedies that we know happen, thousands of others to purchase these guns in spite of issues that should have prevented it, should have kept guns out of the hands of dangerous people. And so we need an initiative, and we are determined to pursue that initiative and stop the scourge that Senator Murphy and I saw firsthand when we went to Newtown on the day of that tragedy that killed 20 beautiful children and sixth grade educators. We were there to see the cries and faces that expressed that grief. As parents, as well as public officials, we know that we will never be the same because of that experience. All of America has to be changed, made safer and better, which we can do if we adopt that principle: no background check, no gun, along with other sensible measures, a ban on illegal trafficking and straw purchases, a mental health initiative, school safety, a comprehensive effort that takes as its central principle no background check, no gun. And for the gun dealers of America, why not do the right thing? Insist that there be a background check before you sell the gun. I'm very honored to now call on my great colleague and friend, Senator Chris Murphy.
Thank you very much, Dick. Thank you to Senator Blumenthal and Senator Schumer for being such amazing leaders on this issue. Thank you to Everytown Moms Demand Action, other groups that have put this event together. The gun lobby built up a political organization over the course of decades. They made it one of the most politically powerful forces in the country. And so it wasn't surprising that when the moment came to pass a common sense background checks bill, they proved victorious. They had built this organization over the course of decades. That's what we're endeavoring to do here. We're going to continue to press for legislative changes today, next week, next month in Congress, but we also know that we have to go about building a political infrastructure that supports the position of 90% of Americans that ultimately is 3 times as powerful as anything that the gun lobby could build themselves. And I think we're on the way to doing that. I join with Senator Blumenthal in calling on retailers to make the simple choice, to make sure that you're not selling guns to criminals. And let's just talk about what we're asking retailers to do here. There's no inconvenience to the retailer in simply requiring that they get information back from the background check system before they let somebody walk out of their store with a gun. You're talking about a tiny percentage of sales that take more than 3 days. And you know why many of them take more than 3 days? Because there's a criminal trying to buy the gun, and it takes the background check system a little bit of extra time to figure out what could be a complicated criminal history. The temporary inconvenience to a smidgen of gun purchasers is certainly worth the lives that we know we could have saved and can save in the future if retailers make this change. So there's absolutely no justification for big gun sellers like Cabela's or Bass Pro Shops not to follow Walmart's lead and simply say, you don't get a gun unless you pass the background check. That's something that every gun retailer, but especially the big national companies, could do this week at no consequence to their bottom line, but at great consequence to the safety of the people who walk in and out of their stores. And so we're going to continue to press this issue legislatively. We're going to continue to press on the retailers to do this for themselves. And we're going to continue to pry upon the consciences of our colleagues. There's a deafening silence coming from Congress. There's 205 days gone in this year, and there's been 205 mass shootings. And not a word from the United States Congress on how we're going to better protect Americans. We can have a dispute about exactly how you think we should go about ending this scourge of mass gun violence. But the fact that there hasn't been any debate in the House and the Senate is an abomination. And our silence is becoming complicity in these murders. I know that Congress's approval ratings are way down low, but people still pay attention when Congress stands up and calls out actions as unacceptable, legislates to try to change behavior. And there's a message being sent to would-be shooters all across this country when Congress does absolutely nothing to try to make people safer. So there's a variety of ways in which we can go about doing this, but I know that we are growing a movement across this country, a movement of gun owners, of moms, of dads, of cousins, of sons, of voters who are going to, in the end, stand up and make this change one way or another. Somebody that's been leading this fight long before Dick and I were standing in that firehouse in Sandy Hook, our great colleague, Senator Chuck Schumer.
Well, thank you, Chris, and I want to thank you and Dick. Connecticut has two of the hardest working, most intelligent, most effective, and as you've just heard, most articulate senators we have in the Senate. And those of us who care about this issue are so lucky that the two of them have taken the lead on this issue. I want to say a word to the men and women who are standing behind me. Just thank you for being here. It's easy for us, it's hard for you. When such a horrible tragedy affects you so personally, as the Bible says, the human instinct is to curse the darkness, to just sit there and curse the darkness. And they say it's almost saint-like. Our religions teach us to light a candle, to try and create light for somebody else, even though the darkness will envelop you for as long as you live. That's an act of strength, and that's an act of courage, and we respect you and thank you for it, because without you, I don't know if we'd get as far as we did. So thank you very much for being here. Well, I just want to say to all of you that I was the author of the Brady Law, the background check law. And what has happened is they have found so many ways around it that it has lost a great deal of its effectiveness. The law stands, but the fact that 40% of all guns are sold without any background check at all, the fact that the background checks that are done are much less effective because the states don't participate, overwhelms us, and it has to change. We can't walk around saying we have an effective law in the books anymore. It's got to be improved. The last month has brought tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. Too many Americans are simply falling victim to gun violence because the safety net that's supposed to protect us is riddled with errors. We've learned a lot about what went wrong in these recent shootings. Every day, headline of our leading papers, problems riddle system to check buyers of guns. That states it very simply in the headline, the lead headline of the New York Times. Same thing was in the New York Post. Rules are inconsistent. Two recent shootings demonstrate gaps in efforts at safety. And I'm sure every one of these people here could talk about a gap in the law that allowed their loved one to be taken from them. The concept we all agree with. We should have a background check. Why can't we tighten it up so it's real? Why can't we tighten it up so you can't go to a gun show or go online? When we wrote the Brady Law, we didn't know what online was. We have to change it. Several things are clear. Too many gun transactions happen without a background check. There are human mistakes, there are systematic mistakes, and then there are the loopholes. Too many, too large. So here is the task before us. We need to repair the net. We need to tighten the net. And we need to expand the net. Unless and until we do those three things, repair, tighten, expand the net, so the big holes in the net are gone and the net is broader, we're going to wake up to headlines like the ones you've seen in the paper. We're all going to ache as we watch the families go to the funerals and say, why, why, why? We're going to see promising young lives vanish in an instant. We're going to reflect on tragedy after tragedy and wonder, why didn't we do something? Enough is enough. We have to tighten our background check system before the next tragedy strikes.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. I am very proud to introduce our next speaker, Reverend Sharon Risher. The Reverend's mother, Ethel Lance, and cousins Susie Jackson and Tywanza Sanders were 3 of the 9 people killed in Charleston at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. As she said, my name is Reverend Sharon Risher, and my mother, Ethel Lance, was one of the 9 people killed in Emmanuel AME Church in the shooting in Charleston, South Carolina last month. While I wish I wasn't here today, I'm also honored to be alongside others who understand that gun violence tragedies can be prevented. My mother was a God-fearing woman, a woman that had smiles, a woman that offered hospitality to anybody that would come to her home and that fatal day in that church. I've spent the last 3 years of my life working as a trauma chaplain at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas, and I can't tell you the amount of gunshot wounds that come through that ER and the amount of families that I have to sit with and give pastoral care to because of gun violence. In the days after my mother's death, nothing made sense to me. After action displayed such vicious hatred, I have never prayed so much in my life. I was sure that God had unleashed a burden on me that I couldn't handle. And I've searched my heart for answers that I can't seem to come up with. But eventually an angel sent Lucy McBath to me, whom I'm also honored to be here today with. Lucy shared with me the works that moms and survivors were doing all across America to rise for Charleston. In a moment of complete despair, it meant so much to me to know that so many Americans were standing up to say enough. And now it's my turn to rise. It's my turn to rise for Chattanooga. It's my turn to rise for Lafayette, to rise for 88 Americans who are killed every day by gun violence, along with hundreds of others who are injured. It's time for me to rise up for my mother and the 8 other families that were killed in Charleston. And demanding action is exactly why I'm here today in the nation's capital, to demand a vote for Congress on the question of background checks on all gun sales. Avoiding this issue is incomprehensible. I've prayed on this issue, and now I'm acting on it. And I hope our leaders, too, will hear my voice. To God be the glory.
Thank you again, Sharon, for being here. Next, we have Lucy McBath, my fearless colleague and friend. Her son, Jordan Davis, was shot and killed in Florida, and she is now our faith and outreach coordinator at Everytown for gun safety.
Good morning. My name is Lucy McBath. I'm here today because 2.5 years ago, I became part of a growing community, a community of pain that no one wants to be a part of. My son, my sweet Jordan, was shot and killed at a gas station in Florida while simply playing loud music in his car. Jordan was just 17 years old when he died. And in the blink of an eye and the pull of a trigger, my life has been forever changed. Since my son was senselessly taken from me, there have been countless other shootings and thousands of other lives taken by gun violence. Each time I learn of another shooting or meet another gun violence survivor, I'm brought back to my own heartache and my own tears and sorrow, which never go away. And I'm reminded once again of the phone call that I received about my son's death. Too many other mothers and fathers have received that same phone call. Every parent's worst nightmare. Now, in just over a month, we've experienced Charleston, Chattanooga, and Lafayette, not to mention the untold number of shootings that occur each and every day. Following the mass shooting at Emmanuel AME Church last month, I traveled to Charleston to stand together and pray together with faith leaders, community leaders, and other gun violence survivors. On my way to Charleston, I read a quote from a local minister who said, "We've been praying for a long time. We've been on our knees for a long time. But now it's time to stand up." After my initial heartbreaking time of sadness, I did just what that minister said. I stood up and I fought. And every day I still fight. In the 2 years since Jordan's death, I have committed my life to advocating for peace and gun violence prevention, work I proudly do through Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America and Everytown for gun safety. I fight for Jordan. I fight for Charleston. I fight for Chattanooga, and I fight for Lafayette. I fight for the 88 people killed and the hundreds of others injured by gun violence in this country every single day. Our nation's unique gun violence crisis and its unacceptable easy access to guns emboldens dangerous people to commit crimes every day. But there are many common sense steps that we can take to reduce gun violence and help keep guns out of dangerous hands. We must do better. We can do better. But we need our leaders in Congress to take meaningful action along with us. We cannot do this alone. Today, we are gathered here together to demand that our elected leaders in Congress commit themselves to work to save as many lives as possible. Not one more life should be taken by senseless gun violence in this country. And with our belief in God and our hope in Congress, we have the power to make this a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. We now have a dear friend and an inspiration to me, Richard Martinez, who took on the gun lobby just days after his own son's shooting murder. Richard's son, Christopher, was shot and killed in the Isla Vista shooting. Richard?
Thank you, Shannon. Good morning. My name is Richard Martinez, and I'm the father of Christopher Ross Michaels Martinez, who was shot and killed last year. Another victim of senseless, preventable gun violence in our country. Christopher was a college student, 20 years old, with his entire life ahead of him. Chris was our only child. The pain from Chris's death is too great, and something no American family should experience. That's why I'm here today. I'm here today because I don't want any other parent in America to experience the crushing loss that's devastated our family. Every day in our country, 88 Americans are shot and killed. Every day in America, children have to fear being shot and killed in their schools. Every day in America, people lose loved ones to senseless, preventable gun violence. Charleston, Chattanooga, Lafayette. In response to these killings, what has Congress done? All words, no action. Their response is, we can't do anything. Nothing will work. That's the way it is. You must just accept the senseless deaths of your loved ones. That's unacceptable. It wasn't like this in the 50s and 60s when I was growing up. It's not like this in any other developed country in the modern world. We are Americans. We can do better. The gun lobby wants us to believe that the answer to gun violence is more guns. More guns as a solution to gun violence is like trying to put out a gasoline fire by pouring gasoline on it. We are Americans. We are practical, innovative, and resilient. Throughout our history, we prided ourselves on finding solutions to difficult problems, working to make the world a better place for our children. We are Americans. We can do better. What can we do? We can support criminal background checks on all gun purchases to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people like felons, domestic abusers, the seriously mentally ill, and terrorists. They say criminal backgrounds don't work, but seat belts in cars don't prevent death in car accidents 100% of the time. But that doesn't mean we should stop using them. Seat belts save a significant number of lives, and background checks work in a significant number of cases. Background checks have prevented dangerous persons from getting guns in those states that have them. And I think Senator Schumer explained to you how the current background check system at the federal level is more ridden with holes than actual effective parts. The longer it takes us to make common sense changes, the more kids like mine are going to die. That's unacceptable to me, and it should be unacceptable to you. When will the insanity stop? Too many have died. We should say to ourselves, not one more. Call your congressional representatives today. Demand a vote on background checks. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Finally, I'm honored to introduce Sandy Phillips, who has certainly lit a candle instead of cursed the darkness, as Senator Schumer said. Sandy is the mother of 24-year-old Jessica Gowie, a victim of the Aurora movie theater shooting. Sandy.
Good morning. As she said, my name is Sandy Phillips, and my daughter Jessica Gowie was murdered in the Aurora movie theater shooting massacre just over 3 years ago. She was only 24. I never thought that I'd be standing here 3 years later with more victims of mass shootings, of lost loved ones that will never have a future. And it breaks my heart daily. There are no words to describe the experience of having your child stolen from you and how it changes you for the rest of your life. Heartbroken is an understatement. So when the news broke last week of the shooting at a movie theater in Lafayette, I was more than just heartbroken. I was enraged, and I still am. Another man with a gun. Another movie theater where you should be safe. Another devastated community and another devastated family. 2 young women, Jillian Johnson, an artist and musician, and Macy Bro, 21, and planning her wedding. They were shot and killed, and 9 others were wounded. Countless lives will forever be affected by the horrific experience of someone opening fire in a movie theater. We have heard their testimony over the time of our trial. You don't know what happened there. And I hope none of you ever have that experience. Now, even more families like my own will live the agony of having an empty seat at their dinner table that will never be filled. And every day they'll learn what it's like to have a hole in their heart that time will never heal. Something is very, very wrong in our country when we can't expect to feel safe in a movie theater, or in our shopping malls, or in our schools, or in our churches. Lafayette was the third high-profile shooting in just over a month to capture our country's attention. But every day, 88 people are killed. 88 people. We don't even have that many people in this room. 88 people. We often don't know their names, and we don't hear their stories. Their senseless deaths leave behind an endless wake of pain and suffering for their families. And that's why it's important to remember the humanity that's lost every time someone is shot and killed. So I want to tell you a little bit about my daughter, Jessie, and the kind of person she was. Jessie had a huge heart. She was well known for her spontaneous acts of kindness, like writing messages to her friends to tell them how special they were. She also had a passion for sports, and she was pursuing an exciting and promising career in sports broadcasting in Denver when she was shot and killed. Jessie never got to realize her full potential, and the world never got to see all that she could do. And that is why I and numerous other survivors here today and out there in our country are honoring the lives and memories of our loved ones by fighting to pass safer gun laws that will prevent another family from experiencing what I do every single day. We can't do this alone. That's why it's imperative that Congress put the safety of the American people first and ahead of the interests of the gun lobby. It's time for our elected leaders to listen to the vast majority of Americans who are calling for common sense legislation that will reduce gun violence and save countless lives. And they can start by standing up and taking meaningful action to work to close those loopholes we've heard so much about today. It's much too easy for dangerous people to get their hands on guns in America. Our leaders in Congress have the power to make critical changes that will save lives. It's too late to save my daughter. It's too late to save the young women in Lafayette and the worshipers in Chattanooga, in South Carolina, and the servicemen in Chattanooga. But it's not too late to save the lives of others. Together, we must send a strong message every day to Congress. Not one more life should be taken to gun violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you to all of our speakers today. As everyone has said, we are here today to demand a vote in Congress that they close the loopholes in our background check system that make it all too easy for dangerous people to buy guns and kill innocent people in their homes, in places of worship, in their jobs, at the movies. No more playing politics. People's lives are not a political game. We ask every member of Congress, will you vote to make our country safer from gun violence? Yes or no? We will make our voices heard in face-to-face meetings with members of Congress here in our nation's capital, and by making phone calls, sending emails, signing petitions. And when our elected leaders head home in August, we will be there too, at district offices and at town hall meetings. Some may say this is an uphill battle, but moms, we know better. We are undeterred. We know Americans of all stripes are behind us. More than 90% of Americans support background checks for all gun sales, including 82% of gun owners and 74% of NRA members. Think about that. That's pretty overwhelming. Again, I'm very thankful to our courageous leaders, Senator Schumer, Blumenthal, and Murphy, and to our incredible gun violence survivors, Reverend Sharon Risher, Richard Martinez, Lucy McBath, Sandy Phillips, and all who bravely shared their stories with us. It's why we are taking our campaign to demand a vote to Congress today. Thank you again, and now we want to open up the floor for questions for our members of Congress.
Talk a little bit about more of that, and Senator Schumer, I'm curious whether you're on board with that as well.
I am.
And I'm curious what the groups feel about that, whether
Well, we are actually collaborating and consulting with our colleagues on ways that we can bring pressure to bear on the gun dealers. We've been in touch with a number of them privately. I'm hopeful that they will be receptive to do the right thing. Senator Murphy made the really excellent point that the inconvenience, and it's no more than a minor delay in selling a gun, is vastly outweighed by the huge costs and consequences in deaths and injuries on our streets, in our homes, in our churches, in our schools. And the 3-day default to proceed loophole, it's a default to proceed. In other words, if there is no background check completed, the default is that the gun dealer can proceed under federal law. That's a voluntary decision by the gun dealer. It's a voluntary decision to enable a killer. It's a voluntary choice to empower a murderer. And it affects a very small proportion of the total gun sales in this country, a minute fraction. But let me give you a statistic that really hits home with me. In the past 5 years, 15,729 guns have been sold to ineligible buyers because of this loophole. Because the gun dealer went ahead and sold the gun after those 3 days, but before completing the background check. 15,729 weapons of murder and destruction were put on the streets because gun dealers were unwilling to wait for the background check to be completed. That's reprehensible and unconscionable. And my hope is that the gun dealers will hear our plea. Do the right thing, no background check, no gun.
I just mentioned there's certainly precedent for retailers acting on their own. Just quickly, there was a wave of outrage across the country when we learned that many retailers and restaurant chains allowed customers to bring guns, assault weapons, into their stores while they ate or shopped. And over the course of several months last year, a number of those big retailers and restaurant chains changed their policies and either prohibited their customers from bringing guns into the store or requested that customers keep their guns out of the store. They didn't go as far as many of us would like, but there's certainly precedent for the bully pulpit of Congress and these advocacy groups making these corporations change their mind prior to legislation being passed.
I'm a signer of Senator Blumenthal and Senator Murphy's letter. I agree with it.
Any other questions?
Yes. I know there's a call for a vote for the background checks. Any indication that's going to happen anytime soon? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's something that many of us feel very strongly should come to a vote, and we're hopeful that we can get a vote on the floor soon. We're trying to, as you know, last time the Manchin to me bill got 54, and we're trying to round up a few more votes.
Remember, just to state the obvious, everybody in this room knows it, 54 is a majority of the United States Senate. Unfortunately, a majority wasn't enough to overcome the 60-vote threshold. If that measure had been permitted to pass by a majority vote, and if that measure had been given a vote in the House, we would have background checks as the law of the land today.
Well, we don't want to wait till 2016. We want to try to get it on the floor at some point this year, next year, this session. Yeah, but we have the right to do amendments.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.